I've spoken about Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Counterparts plenty, and they come in many flavors, from a simple palette swap, to robot forms, to undead forms, to just better forms. But one popular kind of counterpart is the evil counterpart. These monsters take on a more sinister form compared to the original monster, whether they're an evil clone or sibling, or just the monster itself after they've been corrupted. So for this video, I want to cover the best times Yu-Gi-Oh! Monsters went to the dark side. We'll mostly be judging based on aesthetic, since man does evil look cool, but if they have a great effect, that's a bonus. I also like calling them evil counterparts since it has a nice ring to it, but you could say dark counterpart since nearly all of these monsters have dark in their name followed by the original monster's name. But some of them start off as dark attribute already and just become a more sinister looking version of themselves, so I'm going with evil counterparts. I'm also going to be joined by my co-host who may or may not be evil, Judgment Meter.
What if Judgment Meter did have an evil counterpart? What if this Judgment Meter was the evil counterpart? I am evil.
Now, let's turn to the top 10 evil monster counterparts in Yu-Gi-Oh! Number 10, Breaker the Dark Magical Warrior. The original Breaker the Magical Warrior was a staple of early Yu-Gi-Oh! You summon him, he gets a spell counter put on him, and he gains 300 attack if he has a spell counter on him, putting him at 1900 attack. Or you can remove the spell counter to destroy a spell or trap. So he was either a big level 4 normal summon, or a free back row pop. Versatile, and he was also a dark monster, so he worked in chaos strategies that required you to banish a light and a dark. Cue Blackluster Soldier, Chaos Emperor Dragon, Chaos Sorcerer, etc. For such a standout card of old Yu-Gi-Oh! And being involved in the draw monster cardo scene in the anime, he went about a decade with no major acknowledgement in the card game, but out of nowhere in 2014, he not only got a retrain, but it was a dark retrain, or more darker since he was already dark attribute originally. But as we've learned with Yu-Gi-Oh!, dark attribute monsters just harness the power of darkness, but that doesn't mean they're evil. But for this retrain, he was called Breaker the Dark Magical Warrior. I've always had the headcanon that the dark being pointed out in his name means he's evil now, supported by the fact that his armor is now black, his background is darker, and his stance is more imposing, like I feel something corrupted him.
I love it. It's even more dark. It looks like his Konami orbs are dilapidating. You dilapidate!
It's possible that more orbs and a bigger sword just way too much for him.
Those look really heavy.
Well, you won't know unless you try to carry them.
Those look really heavy.
That being said, I don't think he's that good. His attack and defense are the same as the original, but he's level 6 now, and he works with pendulum decks. When he's normal summoned, meaning you'll have to tribute summon for him, he gets 2 spell counters instead of 1, and if you pendulum summon him, he gets 3 counters. As for the benefits of the counters, he now gets 400 attack per spell counter, meaning he can go up to 2800 attack, and he can pop 1 spell or trap per turn by removing a spell counter, so not much improved on that part of the effect, but the attack boost is nice. Like, this version of him just feels like one of those retrains of an old card where they basically double or triple the effect, but the only thing they change is that they make it a tribute monster now, like the Magician of Faith retrain, or the Manju retrain, or the Mahavilo retrain. And for one other quick counterpart, a light version of Breaker was released in 2019, Daybreaker, the Shining Magical Warrior, who gains spell counters when spellcasters are summoned to where his arrows point, and he can pop any card on the field for 2 counters. This cemented to me that original Breaker was neutral to an extent, and whether he wanted to go good or evil depended on if he favored Link or Pendulum summoning. I guess there's some commentary that Pendulum produced the evil one. Just kidding, Pendulum fans, it's not 2016 anymore. You guys deserve some support. Go Abyss Actors. Number 9, Dark Valkyria. This one is here mainly because I like that she was initially a false dark counterpart. I've discussed it plenty in the past, but early Yu-Gi-Oh! Had palette swap counterparts, being monsters with the same design, but with different poses and colors, and they were usually branded as unique unrelated monsters. Never released in English, we had La Moon, a spellcaster lady with horrid stats, level 5, 1200 attack, 1700 defense. Yep, that's the game in 1998. abbreviate for you. Her palette swap counterpart came out about a year later, Valkyrie, a level 5 normal fairy with 1800 attack, 1700 defense, but it came out later than 7-colored fish, who was a level 4 normal monster with 1800 attack, so I didn't really care about her. However, when Valkyrie was printed in English, they were just giving things random names at the time, so they called her Dark Witch, and unintentionally, that made her sound like the dark counterpart of the Light Witch, La Moon. However, Dark Witch is a light fairy, so that theory kind of falls once you get to know this one. This also created a small issue later on, since Valkyrie was retrained into Dunamis Valkyrie, meaning they had to keep the Dark Witch branding on the English name, calling her Dunamis Dark Witch, once again being a light fairy. Also, what's Dunamis? That's one of those Yu-Gi-Oh words that I never knew what it meant and I just kind of accepted it. However, after all those years of being a fake dark counterpart, she finally got a real evil counterpart, Dark Valkyria. They gave up on the Dark Witch naming scheme at this point, since it would have been Dark Witch now, and they switched over to a name based on Valkyrie. She also has the distinction of being the first, and I think only, dark counterpart that's a Gemini monster, if that means anything. Geminis are not too plentiful in the game. For her effect, it's like Breaker, where it destroys something with an extra step in the middle for a spell counter. Actually, 2 extra steps, since Gemini monsters don't get their effect unless they're summoned twice. And what effect do you get when you Gemini summon her? You can put a spell counter on her, she gains 300 attack per spell counter, going up to 2100, and she can remove a spell counter to target and destroy a monster on the field. As much of a stretch as it sounds, that effect isn't too bad for when it came out in 2008, and you could play a pile of Gemini monsters with their support and potentially win. Gemini monsters are bad in general since it's such a slow method, so her issue is more with the Gemini mechanic than the effect itself. But hey, at least she has one of the coolest color schemes of any dark counterpart.
I love how they just make it a little bit darker, put some fire in the background. Now she's dark.
And kind of purple.
Ah, purple.
Final note, Dunamis Dark Witch has a counter-fairy counterpart, Power Angel Valkyria, which I've always viewed as the pure counterpart to Dark Valkyria, just based on the vibes. There's also a Chaos form, which I'll save for when we cover Chaos counterparts, and a Tiramisu Rush Duel form, which, I don't know, I just wanted to point that out. Rush Duel gets all the best looking cards, or at least the funniest looking. Number 8, Dark Elf. Dark Elf is one of those nostalgic cards where it got outclassed early on, but her design is great. She's the dark version of one of my favorite normal monsters, and I believe she was the first of these evil counterparts, so I can't help but love her. As for her potentially being the first evil counterpart, looking at the timeline, she premiered in the second TCG set Metal Raiders, a set after her original counterpart Mystical Elf, and even looking at all the older Japanese sets that we never got internationally, they didn't have this light versus dark or good versus evil monster duo thing going on yet. Counterparts were just palette swaps with little to no relation. Maybe one other evil counterpart snuck in before her at this point, but I'd at least say she was the first significant dark counterpart, in part because Mystical Elf was a notable manga and anime monster. She had her moments, resisting Shadow of Eyes, or using her prayer to attack boost Yugi's borrowed Blue Eyes White Dragon, which got a mediocre retrain that I sulked about on our cards based on anime moments list. And after she was done helping, she went through the ringer. Monsters were chopping off her head or burning her to ash. She had some violent manga deaths. But did she falter? No, she remained unbothered as it happened. And in real life, Mystical Elf was notable for being a 2K defender. You've heard my monologue on her before. Good in the early game when all level 4 monsters had less attack. We call that defense stat a big booty figuratively, and one day I'll commission art where she has a big booty literally, yada yada yada. With Dark Elf being the first dark counterpart, her gimmick was very simple. Her stats were inverted from Mystical Elf's. That's it. Of course, she was also dark, but the big thing was that she was a level 4 monster with 2000 attack. As mentioned, attack stats on level 4s were usually under 2000 in the early game, and you had to work your way up to bigger monsters with tribute summoning. But with her, you could just get momentum right away if your opponent thinks the best defense is a good offense, and they try summoning 7-colored fish on you in attack mode. The trade-off was you have to pay 1000 life points to attack, and life point advantage was still still important in the early game, but it might have been a good price to pay for card advantage, though she was still walled out by 2K defenders, and even as an offensive wall, she was outclassed in the same set by Jirai Gumo, another level 4 monster with 2200 attack, but a much heftier risk when attacking. Still, you could just summon him and not attack, then you got a wall. Really though, I think I favored Dark Elf simply for the sentimental reason. She was my first rare card. She was in the first pack of Yu-Gi-Oh cards I ever got, and I remember that Metal Raiders pack to this day. Armored Lizard, Bistro Butcher, Little Swordsman of the Isle, Share the Pain, Dark Elf, another Share the Pain for some reason, Swamp Battle Guard, Tremendous Fire, and Trent, so she was a staple of my playground deck for a while. Plus, I just thought it was cool that there was an evil mystical elf. I was mainly disappointed we've gone over 25 years with no backstory on who Dark Elf even is compared to Mystical Elf. Is she a different entity? Is she corrupted Mystical Elf? I think she's different, but we don't really know.
I was waiting for this entry! This needs to go in the Louvre.
The what?
The Louvre.
Ah, yes, the Louvre, the
museum.
Oh, okay.
This is gorgeous. This is pure art, but it's also the opposite of Mystical Elf in terms of how the picture is designed. Mystical Elf is like pure symmetry, and then this one is off to the side, and the colors are all different. But they're both so good. They're just both so good. So are they friends? Are they sisters? Are they together? Tell us your ideas in the comment section below. Also, like and subscribe. I want more cards for Dark Elf.
And as even more of a tease, Mystical Elf still appears on cards from time to time, including the Rush Duel card Bubbly Elf, one of my favorites.
That's so cool. She's a singer. She's a pop star.
In one of the video games, you could fuse the two elves to create Cosmo Queen, but I wanted something that's not recycled, something new, the Chaos Elf. I don't know, Konami, give me more Dark Elf, I like her. Number 7, Dark Karibo. Karibo is another monster who has always been Dark attribute, but never evil. The closest we ever got to evil Karibo prior to the focus of this entry was when Yugi solved the Millennium Puzzle in the intro to the Pyramid of Light movie, and we saw that one feral Karibo attack him, which amounted to nothing. And there's also that one scary Karibo alt art, but I never see anyone use it. And if not those ones, I would say Lingaribo, used by the last villain of Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns, but I've always viewed that as just a grumpy Link Karibo, or perhaps a fake Karibo as seen on One Curry Way. But outside of that, all the Karibo are either companion buddies of the anime or manga characters, or they were made after their respective series were over to support anime cards, like the Dark Magician Karibo or the Elemental Hero Karibo. Just check out our whole video ranking the Karibo. But after years of Karibo always helping out the heroes, we got a truly evil Karibo. A force so sinister, his malevolence cannot be satiated by that of... okay, I can't act anymore. Look at him, he's so cute! He thinks he's intimidating. It's like that drawing of the evil hamburger helper mascot.
It's Halloween Karibo! And he's scowling, he's so mad.
What would you do if you saw him in real life?
I would just go up to him and hug him. It's like when I run over and hugged my angry rabbit, Cassie, and she struggles so much, and then just settles, she's like, oh, he's so cute. Oh, squeeze him.
As we discussed in our Karibo video, Karibo monsters tend to be hand traps that prevent or redirect damage in some way, or if they don't do all that, they're at least hand traps or damage preventers, like how Winged Karibo stops all battle damage when it's destroyed by battle. Dark Karibo doesn't protect against damage, but it does protect your monsters, specifically your fiend types and fusions. When those monsters are targeted for an attack, you can discard Dark Karibo, target one of your monsters, and that monster can't be destroyed for the turn, and it cannot have its effects negated. In addition, if Dark Karibo is sent from the hand to the graveyard, you can search Polymerization. Do I make a joke about that, or is that good? Polymerization is very hit or miss in the game now. Some fusion archetypes have effects that specifically support using Polymerization, while others have specially designed fusion spells that get their fusions out more easily, mostly the latter. So I'm not sure if there's a specific strategy in mind for this Karibo. Karibo. If I had to guess, Dark Karibo is meant to specifically be the evil version of Winged Karibo. Aesthetically, it makes sense, since the opposite of angel wings could be demon wings, and Winged Karibo was light, making Dark Karibo's dark attribute hit harder. Plus, Winged Karibo was used by the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX protagonist Judai or Jaden Yuki, whose primary archetype were the elemental heroes, which Winged Karibo eventually joined. But in Season 3 of GX, Jaden was overtaken by the darkness to become the Supreme King temporarily, where he used corrupted forms of his heroes called the Evil Heroes, and now they were mostly Fiend and Fusion monsters. So it makes sense why Dark Karibo specifically supports Fiends and Fusions if it's Winged Karibo's counterpart. Speaking of that, number 6, the whole Evil Hero archetype. This is a pretty cut and dry explanation on paper. The good elemental heroes have their corrupted counterparts, the evil heroes, which are really just their villain forms, but we have to still have hero in their names so they can be used with the overall hero support. And if you're wondering if that just makes them anti-heroes instead, nope, that's the Destiny heroes.
That doesn't make any sense. Heroes aren't supposed to be evil.
Well, it's because they're corrupted heroes.
But then they're not heroes anymore because they're dumb.
There's two subsets of evil heroes to me. There's the one-for-one evil forms of the good heroes, and then there's the ones that got to be their own entities, since an entire archetype of being just counterparts only has so much gas. But since this is a list on counterparts, we'll focus on the ones that are just meant to be the evil forms of the elemental hero fusions. The Supreme King started with Jaden's normal pool of elemental heroes, Avian, Bersenatrix, Sparkman, Clayman, and Wildheart, but because they're evil, he uses Dark Fusion to give these fusions some different results than usual. Let's go down the list in no specific order. Infernal Wing is Flame Wingman's counterpart using Avian and Bersenatrix, where instead of inflicting damage equal to the attack of the monsters it destroys, it goes off the higher stat of that monster and it does piercing damage. I also like how it takes more of Bersenatrix's features for the main part of the body, instead of Avian like it did with Wingman, makes for a good opposite. Next is Infernal Sniper with Evil Rampart Blaster using Bersenatrix and Clayman, but instead of being able to attack directly while in defense mode using half its attack, it inflicts effect damage equal to half its attack while only being in defense mode. It's technically better, but I like how they found a roundabout way to basically do the exact same thing.
I don't even... Why is its waist like that? The anatomy does not make sense here.
Now let's go to Lightning Golem, being Sparkman and Clayman, and it has Thunder Giant's effect, which is to discard a card to destroy one monster with less attack than it on the field, only Golem gets rid of the cost and restriction, so it just pops any monster. A solid upgrade.
Why is his head so tiny?
And for the last of the direct fusion counterparts, we have Wild Cyclone for Wild Wingman, using Avian and Wildheart, but instead of being able to pop a card if you discard with Wild Wingman, it can instead destroy all set cards when it inflicts damage, and it locks down all back row when it attacks to prevent a counterattack.
I do like Wildheart. I don't hate this one.
Overall, these are fun reimaginings in both design and effect. Honestly, they're my favorite part of Evil Heroes, despite not being as good as the meat of the archetype. So let's close out this entry with a rapid fire of some other evil counterpart highlights from the deck. Sinister Necrom is Necroshade, and it summons evil heroes from the deck by banishing itself from the graveyard. A Dusted Gold is Captain Gold, and it searches Dark Fusion and cards that mention it. Toxic Bubble is Neo Bubbleman, and it draws cards. Dead End Prison is Prisma, and it acts as a fusion substitute and a foolish burial for all heroes. Malicious Edge is literally just Blade Edge, but you contribute one less monster to normal summon him. And the final boss, Neos Lord, is the evil elemental hero Neos dressed as the Supreme King, and he lets you take your opponent's monsters, emulating how Jaden's mind was taken over. And there you go. Feel free to rapid fire reactions, Judgment Meter.
Oh wait, I want to see that one.
Which one?
I don't know, the one that it was blue.
Toxic Bubble?
No. You clicked so fast.
Oh, you mean Malicious Edge.
Ooh, that's kind of cool.
Well, you know, he's just a guy.
He's just a guy. Just a guy doing a thing.
But what do you actually think of Toxic Bubble?
Actually, I don't hate this one.
Oh, so he got better from Neo Bubble Man.
Yeah, it got better. He got better when he turned evil.
And do I dare ask what you think about Neos Lord?
Thighs in Yu-Gi-Oh are really big. I don't like this one.
You never like anything with Neos.
I don't like Neos.
And how about Sinister Necrom?
Isn't Necroshade always evil?
No, he's just dark attribute. He's maybe an anti-hero, like Spawn.
Oh, okay. The anti-villain is now evil.
And Dead End Prison?
Is it a dragon?
He's based on a crystal man.
It's a crystal man. Okay, sure. Oh, okay. I kind of like him. I like crystals.
Terrific. Number 5, Dark General Freed. Freed is one of those monsters who was pretty iconic to the visuals of early Yugioh. His original form, Freed the Brave Wanderer, was useful in old Chaos decks, being a good target for banishing a light and a dark to summon Blackluster Soldier and friends, but his own effect, being able to banish excess light monsters in the graveyard to pop a monster stronger than him, was still pretty good for the early game. His upgraded form, Freed the Matchless General, seemed way less useful though. He was a level 5 printed in 2004, so he was really only accessible by Tribute Summon, and his attack was only 2300. His effect was experimental though, which led to those stats. He lets you replace your draw phase with a search of any level 4 or lower warrior. Neat idea, but warrior toolbox decks seem to be just fine running reinforcement of the army and a bunch of protection and revival spells to support their level 4 warriors. General Freed also came with protection against spells that specifically target, but there were still plenty of spells back in the day that did not target that could out him. Dark Hole, Smashing Ground, plus all the trap and monster effect removal. But hey, it stopped Book of Moon, random equip spells, and a handful of those bad removal spells that we played in our playground Yu-Gi-Oh decks because it was the best we had, damn it. Maybe this Freed was around in those decks that we cobbled together as kids, but I did not know any competitive decks that played him in the early days. He was really just there to be an icon.
He's so handsome. He's like old man JoJo, but not oldest man JoJo. He's so stunning. Just like, look at that hand placement, stroking his beard, or, you know, just holding up his chin at that delightful angle. Strong jaw.
As mentioned though, this monster's visual—
He's not a monster, he's a general.
Yes. As mentioned though, the visuals. Both his forms were on so much card art, showing him leading an army, or fighting against an army, or just getting in fights against one of the Gigo forms. We went over his backstory on my original backstory list, but one aspect of his character that was never explored was a random card that came out in 2008, Dark General Freed. It was Freed, but evil. Literally, the effect is just a dark version of General Freed with some tweaks. He can search any level 4 or lower dark monster if you bypass your draw phase, and he protects all of your dark monsters from spells that target, not just himself. The extra trade-off for him covering an entire attribute and not just a type is he cannot be special summoned, which I would say was a pretty big detriment for him back in the day, since generic revival spells and traps were still big in 2008, so I would say he's worse than General Freed. I think he was just made for the reference with no thought on the origin, since he was never involved in the old storyline.
What did they do to my baby? This isn't right. He's perfect.
For how much Freed appeared on card art in the Goat and Edison years and even some beyond, he's pretty much unseen now. Feels weird how he was just dropped, but if guys like Sangan and Gigo also disappeared on card art, maybe I just have to let go of the past. However, we finally got an explanation for the Dark form on a promo card in 2004, Shadow Trouble. We see Dark Freed is a different entity from regular Freed, and now they fight. Maybe. This was Freed's first appearance in what feels like a decade, so we got no other context, and it was just cool to see them interact for the first time.
Kick his ass! Wait, but Freed doesn't have any weapons. He just needs his strong jaw and brushy mustache. Freed, you can take him. Just bust out those pecs. Maybe it's from his nightmares. It's Nightmare Freed. He needs to fight his demons.
This card's effect gets rid of a monster on the field based on how many other cards match its name in the graveyard. 1 destroys, 2 banishes, 3 banishes face down and takes the graveyard names with it. However, Freed and Dark Freed don't have matching names, just one part of their name is the same, so the art is just for the flavor. That being said, that's some good flavor. Number 4, Dark Honest. Honest is another monster iconic iconic to early Yu-Gi-Oh gameplay, this time in the late 2000s and early 2010s. It was a hand trap for light monsters, where when they battle, you can quick effect discard Honest to make your light monster gain the attack of the opponent's monster it's battling. Very good effect back in the day, where eventually other hand trap effects with this attack boost aspect tended to be referred to as Honest effects. He also had an extra effect where when he's on the field, you can return him to your hand at the end phase in case you wanted to poke in for some damage and then use him as a hand trap for the next turn. Honest even had a role in the anime in season 4 of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, being a dual spirit of the student Fujiwara who goes missing. So Honest disguises himself as Fujiwara to do some investigation, and then when Honest emerges, we get to see he's a handsome man. Look at that male model hair the way it parts.
Also has really big thighs. So attractive. I really like Honest. He is so honest. He's like this really big and hot angel man with beautiful long flowing hair and giant thighs.
For being such a big card for light monsters all those years, it felt like a no-brainer when they released an evil variant, Dark Honest. His effect was literally the opposite of Honest, where when your dark monster battles, instead of raising your monster's attack by that of your opponent's monster, it lowers your opponent's monster's attack by whatever their attack value is. So both effects neutralize your opponent's attack, just in different ways.
What did they do to him? Why is he dark?
Because they felt like making him that way. But hey, don't you like his little Fruit Loops rainbow effect going on?
I haven't had Fruit Loops in forever. Though after this video, I am going to have some cereal.
Which cereal?
I mean, I'm pretty boring and I'll have like cornflakes or Cheerios. I'm a boring cereal kind of person.
A couple of issues with this card though. First off, it came out in 2021, where battle phase tricks did not work as well unless you had a whole strategy based around it. Original Honest came out in 2008 when it could be a meta staple, so basically Dark Honest did not need to wait 13 years. And second, this effect is technically worse than Original Honest, since it relies on your opponent's monsters being affected. If your opponent has a monster that's unaffected by monster effects, it won't work, while if it was regular Honest, it affects your own monster instead, so it would not matter if your opponent's monster would react or not. I feel this card was mainly made for limited formats where it would have a chance to compete, or they just made it for the fun of it because evil counterparts are neat. Finally, a lot of people have made this joke, but his name really should have been Dishonest, and I agree, that's a great name. I'm unofficially calling him that now. Number 3. Dark Grepher and Dark Lucius. These are evil versions of Warrior Die Grepher, and there's a whole storyline behind them, which we covered back on our original Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster backstory list and on our revised backstory list. Basically, Warrior Die Grepher gets lost in the different dimension, and he essentially gets swept up in multiverse theory, where he makes a different decision from similar startups, and each form he becomes is a different outcome. For the topic of this list, the trap Painful Return shows he gets led to the choice between two evil versions of himself. The more straightforward one is Dark Grepher. It's just Die Grepher, but soaked in the darkness of the Dark Light. Is that light that's dark or darkness that's light? Either way, I used to think this guy had the best effect. Discard a dark monster that's level 5 or higher and you can special summon Grepher from your hand. And then you can discard another high level dark monster once he's on the field to send a different dark monster from the deck to the graveyard. The effect was still good if you had a dark deck that needed some graveyard setup. This was used for chaos decks or those decks that played Dark Armed Dragon, which needed exactly 3 dark monsters in the graveyard, so it helped you get that specific setup. But many later dark decks that needed graveyard setup usually had better tools and weren't always high level for Grepher's cost. Still, it was a special summon in 2008 and I was all over anything that gave me monster advantage. Plus he looks cool as hell, don't you want to use this guy?
Oh, that's kind of hot. Kind of Voldo. I like that.
Now for that other pathway, I'd say the eviler version of Grepher is Dark Lucius. This was after Grepher finds the Blade of Bow, and the demonic energy takes over his body, turning him into a fiend. With an effect that negates the effects of monsters it destroys in battle. It was 2006. This was a fine effect and based on the effect of the Bow equip spell, but he was weak with only 1000 attack points. I guess you could equip the Blade of Bow to him to make him stronger, but no one would do that.
Is Dark Dark Lucius level 4. It's like reptilian.
That's because he's a part of the old level up mechanic, and he was corrupted as a level 4 monster, so he starts there. He can upgrade into Dark Lucius level 6 during the standby phase if he destroyed a monster. Level 6 has the same effect, but he's stronger.
Wait, I like level 6 better than level 4.
If you think that's good, how about level 8, where he also banishes when he destroys stuff in battle?
I think I like level 6 better. Yeah, level 6 is better.
Okay, well the level 4 form is the more story-relevant one. Remember when I said it's multiverse theory with his forms? Well, on Different Dimension Encounter, he slips through a dimension hole and meets Night Day Grepher, who I would say is the ultimate good form of Grepher. There's also Light Ray Grepher, who is likely a good guy, but I've never seen the light rays used in any decks, so I don't like them that much. Finally, there's Chaos Grepher, who I'm just bringing up to mention them all, along with all of regular Grepher's wacky adventures on his other cards trying to woo DD Warrior Lady in this weird timeline stuff.
He really likes this lady. You know what? He has stamina and he has drive. Now I'm in Tron. Now I have friends after getting dumped repeatedly. Yugioh likes this guy.
But the question is, do you like this guy?
He has some poor choices, but I like the antics that he gets into and all of his different forms.
Anyway, that's all for the dark side of Grepher, though plenty more shenanigans are to be had, which we thankfully documented on a revised backstory list. Number 2, Dark Doriado. This one gets far on the list for that aesthetic alone. When I see this outfit, it makes me think of an anime character after they join the villains, or at least go through a not good phase. I'm so caught up in the design, I don't even care that the effect is gimmicky at best. I've discussed Doriado on both of my ritual lists, but in short, Doriado was a normal monster back in the day whose lore stated that she was the spirit of the forest, so when she was retrained into a ritual monster, she had the gimmick that she was the 4 elemental attributes at the same time: earth, wind, fire, and water, along with her own attribute, light. So it potentially enabled some plays that need a few attributes on the field at the same time, but it wasn't really that good. About a decade after that card, out of nowhere in 2016, we got a more sinister Doriado, Dark Doriado, who did a more malevolent thing with the 4 elements, and by malevolent, I mean she had a different gimmick in the spirit of the original. When placed in the Pendulum Zone, she boosts all your monsters that are any of the 4 elemental attributes by 200 for each different attribute you control, which is a pretty cool gimmick. Plenty of archetypes utilize 4 to 6 attributes, so it's conceptually a good tech card that probably never saw use. For her monster effect on summon, she lets you choose 4 monsters from your deck, 1 of each elemental attribute, and you can stack them on top of your deck in any order, essentially letting you choose your next draw if you don't use an effect that makes you shuffle your deck afterwards. Once again, great concept, but it seems better for the early game rather than in 2016 when searching effects were more prominent and stacking a monster might not be the play. Final note, there's a monster, Shadow Priestess of Ohm, who carries an evil vibe while looking like Doriado but not technically being Doriado. She can tribute a dark monster to inflict 800 damage to your opponent, and it's not once per turn, so she can keep on doing it until she runs out of dark monsters. Conceptually, there's an OTK there, but I don't know the line. If this is not some evil Doriado, fans have headcanoned that it's her palette swap counterpart, Lady of Faith, after she turned evil. And you know what? That kinda makes sense. Ohm seems legit evil looking at her face, while Dark Doriado feels like she could still be good but harnessing the powers of darkness. They should fight. Good dark versus evil dark. Put it on a card, Konami. I can write you a story.
They're all pretty. I love them. Are they in like a magical cult together? 'Cause they're just gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are just alternate forms of the same person. 2, maybe 3 of them are different at most.
Wait, there's only 3? Oh, I wish there were more.
Well, there is the Rush Duel counterpart if you want to count that as different too.
I love her! She's so hot. Is she in the same universe as Bubbly?
Yup, they're part of the same crew.
Wow! Wait, where's Doriado?
Oh, she's not a part of the Rush Duel group.
No! no!
So we've been going by aesthetic for the most part on this list, with the effect taking a back seat. But for the top, there was one dark counterpart, one evil counterpart, that had an effect that laid waste to the meta for a period in the game's life where he felt evil regardless of classification. Number 1. Dark Armed Dragon. The original version of this guy is pretty much irrelevant to the terrors of its dark form, but to give a brief overview of Armed Dragon, it was initially a part of the Level Up series of cards that came out towards the end of the Duel Monsters or GOAT era. It was pretty good for the pace of the game in 2004 or 2005. Level 3 summons Level 5 from the deck during your standby phase, Level 5 summons Level 7 during the end phase after it destroyed something by battle, and eventually they printed Level 10, but it was outside of this era. For the effects, Level 5 can destroy one monster on the field with less attack than itself if you discard a card, and Level 7 can destroy all monsters on the field with attack less than itself if you discard a card. Nice effects. Their existence was amplified by the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, when they were a main archetype used by Chaz or Manjome, where they were dominant when the plot allowed, leading to a flurry of retrains years later that aren't good, but hey, they look neat. But related to this topic, Armed Dragon Level 7 was in the mix of boss monsters from the end of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Era that I mentioned earlier. The last 3 sets before the GX set started were Soul of the Duelist, featuring Armed Dragon and Horus the Black Flame Dragon, Rise of Destiny, featuring the Creator, and Flaming Eternity, featuring the Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys. All 4 of them were solid boss monsters for when they came out in 2004, and even though their flames didn't burn for long, they're at least iconic as some amazing looking cards. But with those 4 representing the end of an era, they all got honored in an unexpected way. The 2008 set, Phantom Darkness, was a set all about the dark. We had dark counterparts galore, like Dark Grepher or Rainbow Dark Dragon, but amidst all the darkness was that bundle of 4 boss monsters, but all dark. Yet, despite them all having around the same boss vibe, one stood out above the rest with no contest: Dark Armed Dragon. They all had gimmicks that rely on dark monsters being in your graveyard, and 3 out of the 4 of them could not be summoned unless you had a specific number of darks in your graveyard. Dark Armed Dragon could only be special summoned if you had 3 dark monsters exactly in your graveyard, which was easy enough. There are plenty of stalling methods, searching methods, sending to graveyard methods, and its effect was amazing. It can banish a dark monster, target a card on the field, and destroy it. No limit per turn. So if you have to have 3 darks in your graveyard to summon him, then you essentially get to destroy 3 cards right away. Of course, you don't get priority, so if you have a trap like Bottomless Trap Hole or something like Book of Moon to flip it face down, you can stop or delay the destruction, but it meant you had to do everything to stop this guy. This was a devastating effect for 2008, and it made it where all decks were centered around searching and summoning Dark Armed Dragon. It dominated for over a year and was relevant for even longer. It was such a standout that no one tends to remember that it was a part of the Dark Counterpart bundle of late Duel Monsters era bosses at the time. I actually went into detail about that on my Forgotten Counterpart list, since it's funny how much the other 3 were left in the dust. That was a fun segment. Check out that video later. I'm so distracted by its effect, I did not even touch on the aesthetic. Yeah, that's a cool pose. I always have trouble making it out initially, but once you find its head, it's like, oh, he's doing a behind the back pose. Neat.
Aww, puppy. It looks like a Houndoom. I like it.
What do you think made him so evil?
Yeah, what? I mean, because it's not as cute, and it's upset that people aren't running up to hug it. Why am I not cute anymore?
So, for being an evil version of a less evil dragon and becoming tier 0 like a villain would, Dark Armed Dragon dominates as the number 1 evil Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster counterpart. Now, what did you think? Were all these monsters great at playing the villain, or were some of them just not as evil as we made them out to be? And what are some of your favorite dark or evil counterparts in Yu-Gi-Oh! Whether we discussed them or not? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.